This is Leisha Holmes of Key Recruitment, and I'm genuinely thrilled and honoured to be joined by a very esteemed guest today. This is John O'Sullivan, who is the chairman of Elite Leaders and non-executive director across the recruitment sector. And I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome you today. Thank you so much, John. How are you?
I'm great, Leisha. Thank you. And I'm honoured to be included on your cast list. Good to see you.
Well, thank you. And honestly, I know that we've known each other a very, very long time. And it seems like it's been a long time coming, you doing this for me. So we're very grateful. And to, we've got listeners on our podcast, the Recruiters Recruitment podcast, and those who choose to come onto YouTube who can have a look. And, we'll make sure your contact information is on there for people who aren't yet familiar with you. So I've invited you on today because I want to talk about the fact that the business community world seems to have sort of shifted, certainly in this last year or so. And Elite Leaders has been around for a while. So what exactly is Elite Leaders? And then talk about that in terms of how you uniquely position that in the community market.
Okay, so Elite Leaders is essentially, it's a networking and peer-to-peer learning support group for owners of aspirational and ambitious recruitment companies. It's aimed at the owners, the entrepreneurs and the directors, to help them develop themselves and to develop the prospects for their companies. We've been around 18 years, believe it or not. Wow. We still think we're a new company, but it's 18 years. And I suppose, where we probably differ, we for 16 or 15 of those 18 years were the only one that was recruitment specific. There were a lot of generic business support groups out there. So we were pretty much a broad church. We were right from training right the way through to helping people exit their business. And I think as the market has got busier and more players have come into that, it's made us look, what are our USPs? You asked the question. And where we position ourselves is much more at high level consultancy. So we're not looking, for example, to have 20,000 members around the world with online stuff. Well, there's a place for that. We're a much more intimate group where we as the principals actually get on under the bonnet of the businesses with our members. And for us, that's our chosen route. Anybody can open a restaurant, but we want to be a Michelin-starred restaurant. Is probably a good analogy. Clearly, we do offer practical guidance. We do offer, hands-on consultancy help. We do offer all the things that everybody offers. But in the end, I think our raison d'etre is to help owners achieve their ambitions and dreams. And by the way, whatever that is, whether your end game is to sell your business, whether it's to get investors, whether it's to float it, whether it's to diversify, or whether it's to have a really healthy, robust lifestyle company, the steps taken towards all of those are the same. And that's really, I think, our expertise where we come in.
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very nicely put. And I like the analogy. Anything to do with food is a great analogy as far as I'm concerned. And in terms of attracting businesses, do you have a particular barrier or a particular entry criteria as such?
It's a really good question, and we ponder it all the time. And it tends not to be about the size of the business. It tends to be more about the attitude of the business. Yeah. So I'm kind of tempted to say we don't really have startups, and we kind of don't. But we do have a lot of businesses that are in early stages of development, but are quite keen to grow quickly and to grow well. We tend not to have many of the super tanker, 200 plus members. So if we've got a sweet spot, it's probably companies, between that 10 and 100 people that are probably have been established for a few years and, are well known in their markets. But I wouldn't rule anybody out, Leisha. It's certainly not a place where anybody can join, and it's not right for everybody either, to be fair.
No.
We're a bit like a health club or a gym. We do actually want people who do want to get fit. Not just come along and have a cappuccino with their mates. That kind of doesn't work. So we focus very much on the word elite now, and we want people who want to be elite in their markets and what that means to them.
I was going to say, by very definition, elite is to elevate yourself, isn't it? It's to be that niche. And I think, understanding from personal experience who's in your community, if I was to, I guess, fundamentally look at what the bottom common denominator is, it's probably that everybody in that is a niche expert and is looking to highlight themselves and take themselves away from their pack.
I couldn't agree more. And that's exactly right, Leisha.
Yeah, no, it's good.
We do have bigger companies and we do have smaller ones.
Oh, of course.
There's not really a barrier. at
No.
either end. As I say, it's more about the attitude.
It's the mindset, isn't it? A lot of things come back down to mindset now, and I know this isn't necessarily something we've prepared to speak about, but it's something we've just spoken about off camera. In that you think that this year things have become much busier for you as a community. That's ironic, given that there's not been any physical networking. So, why do you think that's happened?
Well, again, it's a real surprise, isn't it, Lisa? You know, we've had in the last 2 or 3 months more new members than we'd had in the last 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
And my thinking is, and talking to those people, is that the experience that we've just gone through as an industry and as a country generally has created probably a lot of loneliness, and people may be feeling a bit abandoned on their own, operating as an island. And I think if ever the time was right to join a community, the word you've used, where you can, sound off, compare, share, gain support, give support. I think there's just more of an appetite for that. I mean, we've always felt there was an appetite for it, but I think it's just increased in the last few months. I think the fact that we've gone completely online, as you probably know, essentially we're an events company, and that had to stop. And I think that we've increased the regularity of the meetings and shortened the timings of them. So we're quite easy to access. It's every Thursday over a sandwich at lunchtime. And I think people just like that. So I think it's a combination of factors that have created more of an appetite of communities.
Definitely. And I think there's sort of 2 key words as well as, obviously it's still quite early days for me understanding how your community works, but I think there's that level of vulnerability that you're in this safe space of your peers, but equally the level of accountability as well, that when you're sharing ideas, you think, well, I'm talking to you about it, right? Do you know what? I'm going to go and execute that now. Whereas if you're just on your own, or maybe just talking one-on-one with somebody, you don't have that same sort of overview of what could happen.
Definitely. And what I've been most impressed with in the last 7 or 8 months is the level of genuine collaboration. The WhatsApp groups, people have really, really helped each other. You may have seen there was something on the group yesterday where somebody was looking for a job from one company, somebody else said, why don't you try this? And the person starts on Monday.
I know.
But we've had companies do joint bids for RPO business together, all sorts of truly collaborative things that it's nothing to do with us. It's people operating amongst the community as genuine community members. And I just love that, because for me, it gets to the essence of what it's meant to be about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that if you can bring together groups of people where they've got that shared mindset, then anything is possible. And at the end of the day, it's about creating that best practice, isn't it? So it's the results are there for everybody to see. So, we're at a very critical stage as an industry. And obviously you're a huge advocate for, ensuring growth in the recruitment market. So for those who are watching and listening who are running businesses right now, what would your advice be to ensure they've got a robust strategy for not only a COVID world, because we're never going to be post-COVID now, it's going to be a COVID world, but also we have Brexit looming. So what would your advice be for those business owners now?
Well, of course, COVID, we didn't know about a year or so ago, and we had Brexit, we had IR35, all sorts of issues. And over the years, these things have come at us as an industry. And again, one of the things that makes me proud of our industry is just how robust we are. We're nimble, we're quick on our feet. We seem to be able to navigate around things and work with things and still come out strongly. I think the thing to do is to remember, particularly if you're in white-collar professional recruitment, all of those sectors, by and large, have had underlying skill shortages for a long time.
Correct.
And even COVID probably won't change that. If you're in high-level technology recruitment at the moment, for example, it's thriving because projects don't stop, advances don't stop. And the hiring of people therefore doesn't stop. And I think it's to keep your eye on the money. Recruitment is going to keep happening, and we are a big market in the UK. 35+ billion last year. Even if that market were to shrink, and by the way, I don't think it will, but even if it did, I think the smart money is on increasing your market share, doing the right things to increase your market share. So I don't think anybody should be worried about a collapse in the recruitment sector. I don't think that's coming. The fundamentals are the same, but the things that are changing is clients' buying behaviour. Technology is changing a lot of things. There's definitely a move in business model from contingency recruitment to more relationship-based recruitment. So my advice would be to keep your eye on the money of those things. Make sure And now's the time, as you know, in the business you're in, Leisha, there's some good talent out there. Make sure that you build a team of real commandos, people who know what to do, people that know how to build relationships with clients, that are confident to go out there and do it. And build relationships with clients, get your branding and positioning and marketing right. Make sure that people know what you stand for, what you do, what your values are. And I think go and kick some ass.
I love it.
When you're doing it.
That's going to be the opening line for this. You do know that now, don't you? We're going to kick some ass. That's wonderful. And you know what? None of those things will come as a surprise, really. If most people will have spent the last 8-9 months, you know, opening up the bonnet of their business, understanding what makes them tick, you know, what their values are, what their own behaviours are and should be. Presumably stripping back, there's been a lot of bloated businesses, haven't there? And you know, we've known for a long time that, you know, AI and technology is here to be a support, but actually everything that you've said, and when I speak to any business leader, the relationship element of what we do, the human interaction and the influence that recruiters have will never be more important going forward. And actually it's not the threat. No, everyone thought that it would be this massive threat to our sector, but actually it's embracing it and incorporating it and letting it wed together to ensure you've got everything in place. So it's really reassuring to hear that from you.
It's just the cross in the roads, isn't it? You know, we've been a much maligned industry in the past, sometimes justifiably and often not. But actually, I think we're bordering on being a profession. I think there's some really good people and some great firms, and now's the time to show what you're made of. Clients need help. They're going to need quality information. They're going to need quality resourcing, and if you're the kind of individual or company that can surf that wave, you're probably going to do well.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely, and that's really reassuring. And you've touched on one of the main areas, which will be, you know, technology. I think anybody that's not had their head in a bucket will know that that's probably a growth market. Are there any other predictions for growth as far as you can see from the clients that you're working with?
I mean, the data's coming out from all sorts of places, but I think technology for sure, and the data industries as well. Healthcare, I think, for obvious reasons,
absolutely.
I think traditional engineering as well. You know, engineering, particularly in white collar engineering, is going to grow rapidly. Construction and marketing. You know, all of those sorts of areas are good for growth, I'd say, and set for growth into the
and talent short as well, which is the critical thing here, isn't it? That's really, if you think about whatever your sector is, you add value by knowing where that talent pool is and being able to benchmark it. And
that's the thing that I think underpins everything, Leisha. You know, we make our money by being able to ferret out the best talent that's around and give it clients, move it in the direction of our clients. And clients should pay us and do pay us for our ability to do that. So it's being part of the appropriate communities, making sure that you're not just an opportunistic recruiter, and that you genuinely are offering a service both to clients and candidates. Easy to say, actually, and any website you look at will say it. But it's actually doing it from head to toe within an organisation that is the real test.
Yeah, no, absolutely, definitely. So, as we head into 2021, what are the plans for Elite?
So, I think, well, it would be tempting, wouldn't it, to say, and we had a board meeting yesterday, funny enough, we said, well, look, when are we going to go back to live events? Because we really do want to, and there is a big section of our membership that is looking forward to that. But obviously we've got to be mindful of, you know, what's going on in the wider world, and we have got plans that when it's safe and we're able to do it, to go back to live events. That said, we're probably not going to drop the online stuff.
Good.
Because it's been really effective. We've got, I'll give you an example. We've got a special event this afternoon, for example. We've got Audro talking about video interviewing and how to use that. We've got another one coming up with a guy called Damien Hughes, who's worked with some of the top people in the sports world in particular.
It's in my diary.
Well, you know, we've got 180 people now coming to that. I mean, it's just because we opened it up to the wider world, free to elite members, but we charged a small contribution to non-elite members. We couldn't do that as a live event; it would be just too big a deal. So, for us, it's going to be perhaps to intermingle different approaches: live events, big events, more personal stuff, so that there's almost a potpourri of stuff that people can tune into. We haven't finessed that yet, understandably, because as you said earlier, this time next year we could still be in the same boat. Well, if we are, we'll still be doing this.
Yeah, of course.
But our plans are not to grow massively. As I said at the outset, we don't want thousands of members. We don't want to be biggest and fastest growing intergalactic network in the world, because then it wouldn't work.
No.
So it's to keep the number. It's about the quality, always more numbers, but really about offering as good a service as we can in the current circumstances.
Yeah, no, definitely. That sounds really exciting. So one final point is, I always ask people for what are their top tips for success. What would you say to people listening and watching?
I think top tips for success, and I don't think COVID's really changed this, by the way. I think you've got to have a plan, a strategy, and again, much easier said than done. A meaningful plan that says, this is where we're going. And a good plan, by the way, is one that has flexibility in it. And I don't just mean a budget, I mean a plan that includes a budget. I think you've got to have the right people on the boat with you, and that has always been important, but it's now critical.
Yes, of
you
course.
Can't have any passengers in the business now. You've got to have people who are genuine contributors, and I think you've got to have a very, very meaningful strategy around business development. Where is your business going to come from in the next couple of years? Where do you want to be? And I think if you get that right, if you get your plan right, you get your people strategy right, and you get your customer strategy right. If you combine those three things, it'll be hard to beat you.
Yeah, it's three incredible pillars there, which are actually, like you say, not particularly arduous for anybody to sort out, and will ensure they've got an opportunity to not only survive but then thrive, which is what we want people to aspire to do.
I think people have done some great things in the last few months. I think the sad thing will be if suddenly the world becomes incredibly busy again and everybody just goes back to doing what they did a year before, and doesn't take heed of what's happened and learn from it.
I think it's gone on too long now for that to happen. I think had it only been 2-3 months, I think we would have just reverted back. But I think people now don't want that. We don't want to go back to the way it was. We've all learned too much, haven't we? And I'm excited about the future. From what you've said, I think I agree with you. I think, I interviewed Greg Savage earlier on this year, and he often shares, the sun will shine on recruitment again. I never had any doubt about it. But I think it's about, ensuring you have got those three pillars to ensure you've got a business strategy that means you will do well. And whether that is to have a lifestyle business or whether it is to become global, whatever that might be, just be true to what your vision is.
Couldn't agree more. And Greg's an old friend of Elite as well. He's been presenting us for years and years.
Yeah.
Sunshine and Greg go hand in hand, don't they? Particularly where he lives. But
I was just about to say, maybe not here today.
People should read his stuff, his blogs, etc., because it's very practical and invariably correct. What I like about Greg as well, I would say, and it applies to all the principles at Elite. I didn't mention it earlier when you said about the USP. This is really important, probably the most important comment of the lot. If you're going to join a support group, you need to make sure that the people doing the supporting have actually done it. So I look at myself, Tara Ricks, Barnes, etc., Midge Bennett, Jeff Brooks, all of us and all of our partners, we've all actually done it. So I have built, developed, grown, sold, floated, raised money for recruitment companies over many years. It astonishes me that people do seek advice and support from people who haven't done it. Back in 2004, I ran the London Marathon for my sins, and I ran it well. I was 48 at the time, and I hired a coach, and guess what? I hired a coach who'd run the London Marathon. It just seemed to make sense to me.
Yeah.
So I think, leaning on people like, Greg and my principals and others who have genuinely got the T-shirt and have a desire to help is invaluable.
I think there's an awful lot to be said for that. Like you say, when it comes to credibility, do your due diligence. Don't just go with who makes the most noise, because we all know about empty vessels and all that.
I'll give you a good example. I always think of chefs. If you look at some of the TV chefs and Jamie Oliver and so on and so forth, and Gordon Ramsay, you can criticise them, but at the end of the day, these guys do know how to cook.
Yeah, they do.
And then you like Gino D'Acampio, who's all the ladies like him and he's good on television. He's never been a chef. He's never owned a restaurant.
No.
So, I tend not to buy his cookbooks for that very reason.
True.
I want people who've been chefs, they've been in the kitchen, they know.
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally, and I think that's a really great way to leave this, because you are the ultimate vessel of knowledge and the fountain of wisdom. And you always, every time I speak to you, I always come away smiling. You are a perpetually positive person, and I think it's a wonderful community to be part of. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure there'll be lots of people that will take a lot away from this conversation. So thank you, John. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Leisha. Thanks for having me.